a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The View, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Welcome, beloved. Welcome to episode 392 of the Voices of Unitarian Universalism. I think it's 392. Tanner will correct me if I got that wrong. The View, the VU, the Voices of Unitarian Universalism. We at the Church of the Larger Fellowship are excited to bring this to you to every week, and we're happy to be back with another exciting episode. Today we will be talking about Unitarian Universalist fat liberation, and we have some really great guests that I'm looking forward to introducing to you. I am the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, part of the lead ministry team of the Church of the Larger Fellowship that brings you this talk show each week. I'm coming to you from Peekskill, New York, which is about 35 miles north of New York City, and it is a bright, sunny spring day here. Things are blooming, the birds are chirping, and it's a good day to be here. We have been perhaps unwisely left unsupervised, DC Fortune and myself today, because several of our co-hosts are hopefully getting renewed and re-energized at finding our way home. Our annual retreat for Unitarian Universalist religious professionals of color. So, DC, how are you?
I am well. I am Reverend DC Fortune, he, him pronouns. I am coming to you from central Pennsylvania in the heart of the Susquehanna River Valley at the confluence of the north and west branches, home of the historic home of the Susquehannock people and the Lenni Lenape. Things here are bright and beautiful. I've got lilacs in my yard beginning to bloom. The white ones are just about a few days ahead of the purple ones. And the cherry trees are all in bloom, and the azaleas are going crazy, and my sinuses are having an absolute fit. But it's beautiful, and that's fine. But yeah, I'm excited about today's show, and truly, Michael and I have been left unsupervised, so heaven knows where today's show is going to go. I'm going to hand it back to Michael before I say something that'll
It's
get
all
us
good.
sued.
Yeah, the sinuses are an issue. I don't really like to participate in kink shaming the trees, but I do wish that they would like have their sex somewhere else. Um, it's all good. It's all good. It's a beautiful spring day here. We like to start with a little bit of UU Roundup. And the one thing that we know that's going on in Unitarian Universalism right now is gearing up for an important General Assembly in June. One of the big things that we will be doing at this General Assembly is considering an amendment to Article 2 of our bylaws, the UUA bylaws. And for those of you who still haven't caught on, Article 2 of the UUA bylaws currently contains what we call our principles and purposes and sources. And the proposal from a commission that has done really marvelous and hard work will change it substantially. And we have an opportunity to amend that proposal uh, now. We've been told that amendments are live. If you are a congregational delegate, um, you should go on there and see what people are proposing and discuss it, because we will be voting on which of those amendments to incorporate and send back to the commission at General Assembly, and it's possible that we can change it substantially. Um, who knows? Who knows? If you are a Church of the Larger Fellowship member and you want to be more involved in this process as a delegate to General Assembly, a virtual delegate or an in-person delegate, either one, um, applications are now open for the Church of the Larger Fellowship's member delegate slots. We get 22 member delegate slots. That number is fixed as per the UUA bylaws. We're the only congregation mentioned in the UUA bylaws, and we invite you to express your interest in that. So, anything else going on in Unitarian Universalism that we should chat about, DC?
Oh, not that I'm aware. I'm just thinking happy thoughts for all our friends and colleagues who are at finding our way home.
Hmm.
Um, um, Anytime we are in great moral and social upheaval in the world, it always lands most heavily upon those with marginalized identities. And so just sending them all the love and all of the rejuvenating energy that we can, so that they can rest up and be refreshed and renewed in this week.
Yeah,
We
I
have
have.
the
I
Article 2 thing we call it too. Yeah.
Great. So I've
Right,
I've
that's
I've
the
I've
technical term for it.
I've managed to only send one email to Aisha and Chris this week, and I hope that they've ignored it. Um,
Excellent.
but it was an email about a deadline that someone needs something or thinks they need something from us on Monday, and I had to tell this person that given that 4 of the 5 people supposed to be working on this are at finding our way home, it's very unlikely that we're going to meet your Monday deadline.
Right. Yeah. And you know
Unlikely.
what? UU World, not UU World like the publication, but the UU verse out there. Um, yeah, we can all put stuff on hold for a week until this vital part of our community gets some time. You
Yeah.
know, that's just how that goes. We need to wait and let them do their thing and get better. We do have there's the Article 2, the proposed changes to Article 2 The amendment process is live right now.
Live.
It's online. I think we'll have a link up, I'm sure. I'm of course saying that because Tanner does a magic behind the chalice. So I
Well,
just assume that will happen.
there'll be a link at some point.
Right. But that process is ongoing, and I'm sure there are deadlines for that too, of which I am unaware. Um, but yeah, so if you want to keep track of that and see what's on offer and what people are offering for ideas about amendments to the proposed changes to Article 2, you can go check that out. I presume at uua.org. Um,
Something, something.
yeah.
We'll figure out
So
the link. So
yeah.
let's
All right.
welcome our guests onto the show, shall we? Cindy Landrum was having some connection difficulties, but seems to be back. So let me, without further ado, introduce our guests. The Reverend Dr. Cynthia Landrum. Cindy is a minister and currently serving the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, Massachusetts. She is married with one child and is known for her Zen-tangled inspired art and her collegial leadership in online spaces. In fact, yes, she has several Zen-tangled chalice coloring books available, I believe, at the
Hmm.
UUA bookstore. Cindy identifies as fat and white and is slowly identifying her gender as fat and her body as disabled. And we will talk about that, I'm sure. Amy GSA Brooks is a fat, cisgender, queer, Australian born immigrant to the United States who loves a good cup of hot tea and hates mornings. She is an author and minister who has been working with congregations since 2009. Most recently, she has been busy writing her second book and providing pulpit supply. We are with her on hating mornings, and
Hmm.
hopefully, the view being in the afternoon is a plus. And our third guest is the Reverend Jen Grayson, who is a fat, white, cisgender lesbian from the Midwest. She is called to interim ministry and is currently serving the Tree of Life Unitarian Universalist congregation in Northern Illinois. She is married with
Hey, Jen.
a toddler who is not going to appear on the View today, because otherwise our topic would be toddlers. And the toddler loves apples and all things red. Jen is a geek who runs a weekly Dungeons and Dragons game that is attended mostly by ministers. Cindy and Amy and
Oh my
Jen,
God, I
welcome,
totally went
welcome,
in on that.
welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm just so excited. These are three of like my favorite people.
So
This
I
is
don't
so
know who
fun.
wants to start. Uh, Tell us about Unitarian Universalist fat liberation. What do people who are thinking like what need to know about what it is that this ministry that we are doing, that you are doing? As a fat person and a minister, I'm part of it as well. I will say.
Me too. Me too. Cindy, you want to take the lead on this one, seeing as you seem to be the instigator of this? All
Go
right, go
for it.
ahead. You're live, honey.
For most of that time, I never heard fatness mentioned at our General Assembly or at a regional or district assembly back in the days of districts, or even positively spoken of in a workshop anywhere. And I stayed silent about it because I didn't feel that it was safe to speak up in favor of being fat and saying that I was fat and proud, or to claim this as a justice issue. It was really something that I was told by all of society, and that included Unitarian Universalism, that I should be ashamed of and that I should try to fix. So I was like that really for much of my ministry until I started mentoring a colleague, Julie Brock, actually, who was also a fat minister and who kind of, through her self advocacy, emboldened me to speak up in UU spaces. And so, one of the first voices I heard that was positive in the public sphere was our president nominee, Sophia Betancourt, who spoke up in sermons and claimed fatness and spoke positively of fatness. And then 2 years ago, I and a couple of other colleagues did a GA workshop during the online GA, and it was well received. What we found is that there were a lot of fat UUs who were really happy to hear this spoken about and wanted to hear more. And so this year there's ever fewer workshop slots, and we were not awarded one. So what we're doing is bringing fat liberation to Unitarian Universalism in a different way at General Assembly. And we're going to have ribbons and buttons and stickers that people can pick up that have messages proclaiming fat liberation. And we're going to have some caucus meetings. And we're trying to launch a brand new organization called UU Fat Liberation that will be an organization for UUs to join, that will be an ongoing work advocacy group that will teach us how to do UU Fat Liberation in our congregations. So that's my introduction of what's going on. And I'll hand it to some of my people who have joined in and jumped on this bandwagon to help me with this, to talk about what's exciting about with them.
Jen or Amy, please feel free to jump in. Oh, they're both too polite.
Well,
Stop it.
let me ask a question then, because I'm sure, having been a fat person my entire life, I'm sure, and having internalized messages of fat hatred that come
Mhm.
from society, I've internalized my fair share of those messages. I am sure that there are people out there in Viewland, fat people, thin people, people of all sizes, who are aghast that there are folks openly proclaiming themselves to be fat as a source of identity and even pride. So I'm wondering if someone might speak to fatness as a source of identity and pride, and reclaiming or claiming that term as a positive one.
It took me kind of, I had the same experience of a long time, like trying to hide from it. And I would sometimes even be afraid to be around children in front of adults, because honestly, children say you're fat and they don't mean anything by it. They're just, this is what I see. But if they say it in front of adults, everybody gets very like anxious and tense, and it's all sorts of awkward. Um, so especially early in my ministry, I would hate to bring children forward for stories for all ages, because then they would see it. And then it occurred to me at one point that everybody actually knows I'm fat. Like if you see me, um, I mean, especially, I mean, you can see the top part of me, but it continues to get wider as you go down, very pear-shapey. Um, and everybody already knows. Like, so then it was a matter of figuring out, if I claim that as my identity, then I'm making it okay. Like, it's okay for people to talk about. It's okay for me to talk about. It was really my wife who helped me come to a positive place with that. She does a lot of teaching. She's getting a PhD in health, um, interdisciplinary health sciences. Almost forgot. And so she teaches people who are coming up in the health field about how to relate to people who are fat, how to understand that this isn't a negative thing. It isn't a willpower issue if they would just do better. She's the first person who taught me that, you can actually refuse to get weighed at the doctor's office. If you're not getting medication, yeah, you can just tell them, no, thank you. If you're not getting medication or getting something that actually they need to know your weight, you can just say no. It can be hard for them though. They don't always accept it very well. Um, it's been a big transition for me to come to a more positive place.
Mm. Mm.
If I
Amy,
may,
any-
I would like to say, yeah, I'm not sure with our viewers who are not fat people how well understood the world of oppression that fat people experience in society, let alone
Mhm.
in our congregations and fellowships. So the ways that anti-fat sentiment impacts fat people is in the medical realm. I had a visit with a new medical provider I'd met for 5 minutes, who, having run no blood tests, who, having asked 0 questions about my activity level or my diet, was urging me to consider weight loss surgery. You know, it's in the medical world, it's in our access to clothing, it's in how much more expensive it is to dress ourselves. It is in this sort of professional standards of dress and how much more difficult it is to achieve what is considered acceptable in fat bodies. It's to do with the absence of people like me in the media I consume. I'm flying to Australia next month to see my family again after 10 years. I should be focusing on how exciting that is. Instead, part of my brain is worried, will I fit in the seat of the plane? Will they have a seatbelt extender for my use? So if you're not familiar with what it is to be in our society, in our world as a fat person, then I ask you to think about these things and how it might impact you if that was everyday part of your experience.
Yeah, it's real. I remember very vividly, I guess it's about 10 or 12 years ago, going to the doctor because I had extreme pain in the joints of my hands. My hands. And the doctor said, you should probably lose weight. And I said, it's my
Mhm.
hands that hurt. Like, I'm not walking on them, they are not weight bearing parts of my body. My hands hurt so much that I can't grasp a pen some days.
Mhm.
And her only advice to me was to lose weight. And 10 years later, it turns out I have rheumatoid arthritis that was allowed to progress for 10
Right.
years because all my doctor would say was lose weight. I had to find another doctor, and I did.
Right.
But like those of us who live in fat bodies, don't know. Like, is the new doctor gonna say the same thing? Because so many doctors say shit like that. And we can call it shit like that here on The View. Uh, Jen, you
Yes, we
look
get
like
to
you want to
swear.
say something.
My wife shares a comic with her students that is, this person has come to the doctor and has this big, like, tree through their body, and they're like, doctor, help me, and the doctor's like, have you considered losing weight?
Right? Yeah. Yep. Hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a universal experience that all of us who are fat have had, right?
Yep.
It's not like we're all going to the same doctor.
Right.
That's the problem.
It is.
Yeah. Another thing that I see as a fat person is with public accommodations.
Mm,
If I go to a party and all, like an outdoor cookout, and all they have are those white plastic resin lawn chairs, I'm standing. First off, my hips don't fit into those things, and second, I'm not convinced that they're structurally sound enough to hold the weight of my body. And I would rather stand all day and have my knees and ankles swell than endure the humiliation of having a chair collapse under me in front of people. You know, Um, I like the church where I am. We have a mixture of chairs in our sanctuary. Some of them have arms, and most of them don't. But armchairs are necessary for some of our folks, particularly some of our elder folks who need help getting up. Right? They need to be able to put their hands down on the arm of the chair and lift themselves up. But for those of us who have wider hips and wider bodies, the chairs with arms are really uncomfortable. And I think about like seating on a bus or seating on a train or seating, like Amy said, in an airplane. I will say I belong to a Facebook
at General Assembly or
at
a
General
conference.
Assembly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I belong. There's a Facebook group called Flying While Fat.
I'm in that too.
That I love because people will share their experiences with different airlines, and recommend. Well, if your flight's only going from here to here, then any airline will be fine. But if you need to be stuck in that like a cork in a bottle in that thing for 6 hours, you might not want to use this particular airline or that airline. So it's, there's networking stuff. But for use, this goes to our principles and our values about affirming people and understanding that everyone has value and everyone has worth. And yet we don't do that very often. We lost Cindy again. Cindy's having some
DC,
tech problems.
DC, I'm really glad you bring that up. I think it's really important in this conversation that we understand the connection between anti-fat oppression and the white supremacy culture that we live within and its impact on our society and on our organization. Standards regarding our body are really connected very strongly to what heterosexual cisgender white European men decided were acceptable bodies. And this impacts us, all of us who are of other genders than that and other sexualities and other types of bodies. Fat bodies are often sexualized and fetishized. Our Odisha, or both at the same time somehow with magic skills, understanding that both impositions on us are made at the same time. We either have no sex or we are overtly sexual. And please do.
So Michael, when they gave my introduction, said that I've been starting to identify my gender as fat. And that's really partly because of the way fat people are desexualized. But I stopped considering myself either gender because of the way society has treated me as a fat person. But then embracing that and coming to claim it for myself to say, and I wrote on a colleague's post recently who was asking, what's your gender? And inviting creative ways to explain that, because fat is how I choose my clothes, and fat is how I wear my hair, and fat is what shoes I choose to wear. And everything about my self-presentation isn't because I'm trying to be femme or butch or male or female or anywhere on a gender spectrum. I'm choosing things because this is fat identity for me, and this is necessary and important to my fat body. And so I've started to really embrace that identity rather than just let it be thrown at me constantly by society.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's been hard. It's been hard to claim, but it's been important to me to start doing that. Yeah, and I'm so glad you all we're talking about airlines and the ways in which society makes it so difficult to walk through the world in a fat body. I'm traveling by plane tomorrow, And I'm going out of my way because the only airline that gives you an automatic like free second seat is Southwest. And so, but Southwest doesn't fly to Asheville where I'm going. And so I'm having to fly to a nearby city and then drive into Asheville because I'm limited, because our industries are not accepting of fat bodies in making things possible to afford to travel. Similarly, I shop almost exclusively online now because I can't find a brick and mortar store in my area that carries fat clothing, which means that I have to go through the process of having it shipped to me, see if it works, see if it fits, and if not, ship it back, get another thing, and so on. You know, and you can't feel fabric when you're buying online. But it's more. But it's more than just how we want to help congregations like advocate for changes in the world. Well, that's really important too. We also want to see changes to our association and to congregations, because I think there's a lot, and I think my colleagues here can express how they've experienced things in our association and in our congregations that are not always as welcoming as they could be as well.
You know, there's a thing that non-fat people do, a well-meaning non-fat people. When we say I'm fat, they've been conditioned to read fat as 100% a negative thing, and they say, "Oh no, you're not. You're beautiful." And I'm like, we can be both.
Or even if they don't feel like they can,
thing,
even if they don't feel like they can say, "Oh no, you're not," they say, "Oh,
right.
Don't say that."
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I mean, we've been, our society, like Amy said, based on, you know, the straight white European male heterosexual version of marketing that is targeted toward a particular body style and shape and affect, you know, is the colonization of bodies. And we have so many people who are loving people who want to be affirming, but just don't have the language to do that for people with fat bodies. You know, they just, Jen, I saw a thought happen there.
I was just agreeing.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know how to say yes and when it comes to being fat. It's like putting the name fat on a person almost negates every other characteristic of that person. Makes all that other stuff, like how smart we are, how artistic we are, how creative we are, how all of our other things, it all gets negated when you put the word fat in front of it, you know? Cindy, I interrupted.
Right, and I'm sorry.
No, go.
We're all going to very polite here and make each other speak.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I just wanted to say, in an organization that leans in on affirming the worth of all people, what I would ask of Unitarian Universalists is not to affirm the worth of each of us, but to affirm the worth of all of each of us. So the whole of who I am, the fullness of who I am as a fat person is worthy of affirmation.
So it's not like you have worth even though you're fat. It's you have worth as a fat person.
Yes.
Janine, writing online says, I wonder if the Fat Liberation Team is considering a congregational certification program like Green Sanctuary or Welcoming Congregation. I would love to have an educational module.
Yeah, what we put together 2 years ago was sort of the very basic beginnings of that, which is to say, here's like a sheet of what your congregation can do and just some steps. And I would love to see us develop into a certification program where we certify that congregations are, at least on the road to fat liberation as a congregation. And so, like, starting with, does your church have a fat liberation committee? Or does it have a committee that embraces fat liberation as part of its committee's work even? And moving on to, have you put like welcome of fat people and pictures of fat people on your website? And have you looked, and then it'll go into steps of, have you looked at the chairs in your sanctuary or in your meeting rooms and made sure that you have a diversity of chairs that fit different bodies? Can you say that you've included fat people illustrations in sermons and workshops at your church? And then moving on to, how do congregations reach out into the larger world of, are you advocating for even like restaurants in your neighborhood that you go to as a congregation regularly to not be all locked booths in spaces, or for clothing stores to have big sizes, or to not charge more for larger sizes because they don't charge less for the smaller sizes? um, and moving on to, like, how do we liberate out in society for equal rights, down to, are you fighting when, there have been things like parents whose children have been taken away from them because the children were fat? And are we fighting for, there's only one state in the union, my home state of Michigan, that has fat among its protected classes in its non-discrimination policy as a state, one state, and a handful of cities across the country. Are we fighting for it to be our cities and in our state that fat people are protected from discrimination? We can lose jobs because we're fat. We can be discriminated against because we're fat.
Wow.
We can have congregations decide against calling us because we are fat as
Yes.
ministers.
Mhm.
We can and do.
We can and
Yes.
do.
When I was in seminary, we had somebody from the association come and speak to the UU students, and I imagine that this person looked at me when they said it, and they may have, because I was definitely the fattest person in the room. But they said, fairly matter of factly, that size discrimination is the only okay discrimination in our churches. I heard that in seminary, and then
Mhm.
yeah,
Me too.
and then in my internship. My first internship, the interview with the minister was by phone, and I was later told that they weren't sure they would have hired me if they had seen me.
Mm.
Wow.
Mhm.
And I think that was something they were working on, but it was something to hear. I mean, this is early on. At the ministerial fellowship committee, I was required to join Overeaters Anonymous as part of my list of things to work on. So it's definitely an okay thing in our association right now. But
Mhm.
then at the same time, when I was in my internship, I had a woman come up to me who was new to our congregation, and she was fat, and she said, I was so nervous about coming to church, any church, that I would be judged. And I came here and I saw you in the pulpit, and a fat person in the pulpit, and I knew it would be okay. And that's part of the reason why it is so important for us to continue this work. And it's like, at the same time, yes, it is. It's particularly, I think, particularly harsh judgment applied against women and people who, yeah. And sorry, I lost I lost my thread. It's important for us to be there, and at the same time, yeah, ministers, like, I'm in search right now, and it's a concern. Like, as I mentioned, the top half of me presents as much smaller than the bottom half. And so feel a little nervous about, will search committees be willing to hire me? And then what are they going to think when they actually see me? And it's something that I still have to struggle with, of my own internalized fear of society. And yeah, there's so much energy as a fat person that's spent on things like, will I be able to fit in airplane seats? When my congregation wants to have a meal at a restaurant, I like go on the restaurant site or the Google pages and try to see the chairs. Will I be embarrassed if I have to ask for a chair without arms in front of congregants? All of that energy that fat folks have to spend just to get around in the world as it is right now.
Yeah, think about people who are applying to congregations, and when you're applying to, and you're going through pre-candidating or candidating weeks, and you have to explain then to that search committee, which you're already wondering about, will they be biased against me because I'm fat? You have to explain to that search committee, I need you to purchase 2 airline seats for me, and or you have to say, go ahead and get 1 airline seat, and then you swallow the cost for the second one, in order to hide that part of the oppression from a search committee.
And then we brace for the inevitable inappropriate questions about our health that are so much concern trolling, because they're going to come at some point in the interview or in the beginnings of our ministry. There are going to be people so very concerned that we are healthy, without
and there's
being
a really
our
hard
doctors.
struggle. There's a really hard struggle, Michael, within fat liberation between wanting to decouple health and fatness and say, we're healthy at every size, right? That's a movement, health at every size. And to say, I'm not unhealthy just because I'm fat. And that's one way we end up going a lot, is trying to say fat people are not unhealthy. But I want us to take it a step further and say, we're all unhealthy in various ways, and we're all healthy in various ways. And that is not something for you to judge about your minister. The question is, are they doing the job? Or do they need assistance for parts of the job? And not placing that question of health, because I think it's also a desire we have when somebody is considered unhealthy, that we then say, let me judge that unhealthiness and whether or not it's your fault and your cause. And so whether you are to blame for it, or whether it's a pure and innocent unhealthiness, in which case we support and love you. And the fat liberation movement really needs that judging of health to end. It's not right for us to be saying, oh, but your unhealthiness is because you're fat and you can control fat, so therefore your unhealthiness is bad. Or to say, we're advocating for the fact that unhealthiness isn't your fault if you're unhealthy because you're fat and therefore you're good. Let's just stop it all.
Right. Yeah. Something that I said to Jen, something that I posted in the chat, that is what sidetracked Jen, is that all of not all, big word. I have, in my experience, when I was presenting as female in my life, I got a lot more shame. People were a lot more willing to be rude and inappropriate in public. For a long time, I would wear a clerical collar when I was flying anywhere, because people were far less willing to say rude things to the fat priest than they were to the fat lesbian. And now I get nothing, for the most part. Nobody says anything to me. There is a lot of freedom around body size for men or for people who are presenting as male, there's a lot more freedom now for me than there was 10 years ago, when I was presenting as much more female. I never presented feminine, but I presented as having a female body, and I've noticed that all kinds of body judgment, like fashion, hair, clothes, like the state of my presence when I go into Lowe's because I'm short on a pound of nails or something and I'm in the middle of a project, I can go in there absolutely stinking filthy and pick up my nails and nobody gives me a second look. But when I was presenting as female, I would have to do a lot of cleanup before I went out, right?
Even if you were just getting nails from Lowe's.
Even if I was just getting nails.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's been really jarring because I've gone through life sort of with this practice of putting on the emotional armor to move through the world and finding out that I don't need it as much as I used to.
So
Connection between misogyny and sexism and all of this is really
body
deep
stuff
and important.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's important for us to name too the connections between fat and racism and fat and ableism in particular, as well as some other oppressions, but those two in particular, it's very, very much connected to.
Yeah.
So Amy has let us know in the chat behind the scenes that our viewers don't see that she has a poem on this topic, and a little fat poetry moment, I think is a lovely thing.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So I invite you to share it.
Sure, thank you. For context, I write poetry for congregational use that interrogates specifically the Bible and invites people to revisit that text through a sense as marginalized people. So for this poem, I am using the 23rd Psalm as my text, specifically the line that says, you being the line, you prepare a table of my enemy. And this poem, it's very new, it's a word progress, but it's titled On the Subject of Eating While Fat. I will eat at the table. I will not be shamed into eating in secret, will not dine in my closet, will not in my car counting calorie crying. I will eat in public. I will bite, chew, and swallow in the presence of my enemies. I will dine defiant of the glares of self-appointed judges. I will accept no condemnation. I will eat at the table that has been prepared for me, a smorgasbord of all that is good and right and true, gathered from all four. I will call no food unclean. I shall not want. My cup overflows. I will eat.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We're all stunned. We're all stunned into silence because that was so beautiful. And I think probably because all of us have had the experience of being shamed for simply sitting at a table to dine.
Right. Yeah. And having made decisions about like, am I going to order this in front of other people?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I'm wondering if we should talk just about the word fat a little bit too, because I think
Please.
that we jumped right in with fat liberation, and we didn't. But there's some folks who say, well, why are you using the word fat? It's so negative. And shouldn't we use the word obesity?
Oh my God.
Or
Let's pathologize an identity. Let's do that. Let's bring back homosexual while we're at it.
So we use fat because it's a simple descriptor word, and while it is used negatively by many people, we're reclaiming it the way other groups have reclaimed words that have been used negatively. You know, all the way back to the word witch, or and so obesity. Someone else jump in about like why we don't say obesity.
Well, I think DC
because it's a
mentioned, at
medical
least for
term.
me. Oh,
yeah. Obesity, or another one is bariatric. Bariatric is the sort of medical term they use for chairs for fat people.
Yeah.
Right. If you go to the hospital and you have to get wheeled in for anything, they'll ask for a bariatric chair.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Which is the extra wide ones, as opposed to just an extra wide wheelchair, right? Because they have pathologized our bodies in the same way 19th century, 18th or 19th century English law pathologized being gay, so that they could create a criminal code around this behavior that they didn't like, which is where the term homosexuality came from. So
yeah, so similarly, obesity is used to pathologize us by the medical industry and used to label and discriminate right now. That's so within some fat liberation movements, they won't even like type the word, they'll put an asterisk in it because it's become such a harmful word.
Wow.
Can I also say fat is a necessary part of life? So okay, I'm a scientist by training, right? Like fat is a necessary nutrient that every body needs to consume. Fat is one of the things that is necessary to give food flavor so that we can enjoy it.
No kidding.
Right? So like I want to, I also
any cook will tell you that.
That's right. Exactly. And like, right, what fat you use in your cooking changes the flavor. And if you don't use any, you probably have something bland.
You won't live longer necessarily. It'll just feel like a much longer time.
So
a longer, joyless, flavorless time.
So I want to claim fat as a beautiful substance as much as a beautiful thing, and a beautiful description of beautiful bodies. Because it's like,
that is what is present when we have enough.
Yes.
Right. When we are not living subsistent lives, fat is what is present when we are living abundantly, when we are taken, nourished, and cared for.
Jeez,
and another word about obesity is how often do we hear the word obesity combined with the word morbidly, like morbidly obese. I mean, during the pandemic, it was a constant of like, oh, and a lot of times people say, oh, well, you're not really in danger from COVID unless you're in one of these categories, like being morbidly obese. So we don't really have to worry as a congregation, as a culture, as a group, whatever group is talking about it. We don't really have to worry, because unless you're in a category like morbidly obese, you're fine.
Right. And if you are in that category, then there's the blame associated with it, and clearly you're not valuable enough to bother saving.
Exactly.
It's your fault. You're in that category.
Combining and putting us at death's door by the medical industry to say, we're not even bothering to save you because you're already deathly bound.
Right.
We did that with older folks too. It's like
morbidly elderly.
Yeah. We don't do that with any other category, do we? Say morbidly elderly?
No, we don't. Of course we don't. So we're getting to the end of our...
We don't say morbidly thin.
No.
Right.
We're getting to the end of our show, and I want, because I know that you did this on purpose, Cindy, and I'm hoping you did it on purpose, Amy. I want to let the not fat people in on the joke of wearing stripes on the show.
Or dark colors because they're slimming.
I went with purple. So
I wore vertical stripes. So you would be surprised when you heard that I was a fat person.
My choices were based on what was clean. Can I say I have a little story about swimsuits, which are just an absolute emotional minefield.
Oh my goodness.
For fat people, and especially so for fat people with female bodies. When I was in California doing my internship, I found a place that would do some custom work in neoprene. It happened to also do custom work. It was a leather shop. It was a and for God's sakes, do not search this on your work computer. You will have really uncomfortable conversations with tech and human resources. But the place is called Mr. S Leather. And what I did was I went in and I asked them to make a swimsuit for my fat body. And they came up with a one-piece zippered swimsuit that fit my body and my gender expression in a way that was affirming and didn't have that goddamn floral ruffle, right? The floral ruffle? What's that supposed to do? Make it look like I don't have an ass?
It's,
like, what's that?
Totally
right? Or I look like somebody shot a couch. What is up with that?
I shudder to think how much your custom neoprene swimsuit that affirmed your body cost, because that circles back. Yeah, shudder to think.
I can only imagine knowing how much extra I paid for my robe.
Right, they gave it to me, and this poor sweet man who handed me my product finally, like, okay, here it is, we got it all done. And I just burst into tears in the middle of the showroom because I was going to be able to swim in public for the first time in 20 years. And I mean, if it weren't for the fact that I was familiar with the kink and the leather communities, I wouldn't have known that this place existed. And it's certainly not someplace you can take your 12-year-old to find a good swimsuit. But
unless your 12-year-old is an owl.
No, you can't get into the store unless you're 18.
Oh, okay.
But I just sort of given up on being able to swim.
Yeah.
Well, we have reached,
because any suit that fit my body had the goddamn ruffle.
Yep.
or flowers, you know, and it looked like somebody shot a spandex couch. And it just, it was awful. But then I got this thing, and it was like a tank top,
Yeah.
one piece with like board shorts.
Well,
Oh
bring
my
your
God, it was so
swimsuit to
liberating.
GA, and we'll swim
I don't
in my
use that one
hotel's pool
anymore.
sometime. We have
Yes.
reached the top of the hour, but I want to make sure that our
Well,
guests get the last
we have a
word.
guest. We have a guest. We have
We
a little
do.
guest.
We have a guest.
Say hi.
Hi, little guest.
No.
Do we have any
Wow. Okay.
very quickly last things that you want to say, Amy or Cindy or Jen?
Yeah, we fortunately reached our goal on our UU Fat Liberation Faithify, which is why I originally wanted to come on. So we'll still accept donations though, and if you're coming to GA, look for our stuff in the exhibit hall. We're gonna be fat liberationing it all over the place.
Get some beautiful
Awesome.
stickers and buttons and things.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us on The View. This has been a fascinating conversation. I hope people got a lot out of it. We'll see you next week.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having
It's
us.
been wonderful. See you next week, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.